watch me for the 7 point. Just watch me for the 7 point. All right, Washington Post.
Please welcome the Vice Presidents General, the Class of 2021. Ann Schaefer, Washington, D.C. Nancy Folk, Alabama. Diane Culbertson, South Carolina. Judy Osler, Texas. Joyce Patton, Georgia. Elizabeth Graham, North Carolina. Donna Weaver, Wyoming. The Class of 2020. Claudia Onken, Delaware. Stephanie Troff, Arizona. Marcy Kimmenaugh, Colorado. Candace Freiberger, Illinois. Barbara Zink, Kentucky. April Staley, Connecticut. Virginia Poffenberger, Florida. The Class of 2019. Martha Krapser, New York. Billy Breedlove, Mississippi. Bobby McMullen, Pennsylvania. Sandra McCann, Ohio. Gail Terry, Massachusetts. Virginia Storage, Virginia. Susan Thomas, Tennessee. And now, your executive officers. Connie Ball Oldie, Reporter General. Barbara McDonald Frankenberry, Curator General. Patricia Music Hatfield, Librarian General. Virginia Hudson Trader, Historian General. Mary Bannister Frisch, Registrar General. Carol Oakley Jackson, Treasurer General. Morgan Meyer Lake, Recording Secretary General. Pamela Rouse Wright, Chaplain General. Denise Doring Van Buren, First Vice President General. And your President General, Ann Turner Dillon.
Good evening. Welcome to the opening night ceremonies of the 128th Continental Congress. We are so glad that you are here. By virtue of the authority vested in me as President General of the National Society, Daughters of the American Revolution, I call to order the 128th Continental Congress. Please remain standing through the singing of the national anthem and the posting of the colors. Pamela Rouse Wright, Chaplain General, will give the invocation. Mrs. Wright.
Thank you, Madam President General. Our scripture this evening comes from Psalm 100, verses 4 and 5. Enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Give thanks to him and praise his name. For the Lord is good and his love endures forever. His faithfulness continues through all generations. I now invite you to pray in your faith and tradition as I pray in mine. May we pray together. Heavenly Father, we delight in the generous blessings showered upon us through your gifts of love, grace, peace, purpose, and hope. You have taught us, blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord, and we are thankful to be a society whose motto is God, home, and country. We are thankful for the faith and bravery of our forefathers. We lift in prayer the men and women who have fought for our freedom, leaving a legacy of love and loyalty for all descendants. We lift in prayer those who are sick, those who are lonely, those who are less fortunate, those unable to be with us this evening. May they take comfort in your faithfulness that continues through all generations. May our steadfast faith in you never be extinguished as it is the foundation of our American heritage. These things we pray to the glory of God and in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Lynn Forney Young, Honorary President General, will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Mrs. Young.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Susan Thomas, Vice President General, will lead the Americans' Creed. Mrs. Thomas.
I believe in the United States of America as a government of the people, by the people, for the people, whose just powers are derived from the consent of the governed, a democracy and a republic, a sovereign nation of many sovereign states, a perfect union, one and inseparable, established upon those principles of freedom, equality, justice, and humanity, for which American patriots sacrificed their lives and fortunes. I therefore believe it is my duty to my country to love it, to support its Constitution, to obey its laws, to respect its flag, and to defend it against all enemies.
Our early members dedicated this auditorium to recognize the Constitution of the United States. Tonight, as we convene in this historic Constitution Hall, let us acknowledge the document that is the foundation of our nation. Jeannie Hornung, National Chair of the Constitution Week Committee, will lead the preamble of to the Constitution of the United States of America. Mrs. Hornung.
We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of their liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America.
Virginia Hudson Trader, Historian General, will lead the Assembly in singing the first verse of the national anthem. Mrs. Trader.
Horns up.
The Air Force Band will now play some music while the colors and the state flags are posted and the pages retire. We are delighted to have the United States Air Force Band's ceremonial brass with us this evening under the direction of Senior Master Sergeant Daniel Valladay. The United States Air Force Band is the premier musical organization of the Air Force. It was formed in September of 1941 as the Bowling Army Air Force Band and later became the United States Air Force Band when the Air Force became a separate branch of the United States military in 1947. Since 1972, the band has considered the DAR Constitution Hall as its home concert stage. Please join me in expressing our appreciation to the United States Air Force Band's ceremonial brass. As the Air Force Band retires from the stage, please turn your attention to the screen to see some images of the amazing service work daughters have done across the country over the last few years, moving forward in service to America. And you may be seated if you haven't already. Thank you. The President of the United States has sent greetings to be presented to the Assembly as he could not be with us in person. Would you please stand for his greetings? Melania joins me in sending our warmest wishes to those gathered at Constitution Hall for the 128th Continental Congress of the Daughters of the American Revolution. Since 1890, the DAR has performed acts of service to improve the lives of our fellow Americans and to strengthen our nation's communities. Moreover, the remarkable women of the DAR have been instrumental in efforts to preserve our American story by volunteering their time to upkeep and restore many of our country's historic landmarks. Future generations of Americans will better understand and appreciate our nation's fight for freedom because of the DAR's commitment to safeguarding our proud legacy of liberty. Tonight's ceremony acknowledges the outstanding work you have accomplished in this last year, from supporting our nation's veterans and active duty service members to promoting literacy and providing educational scholarship programs. Your contributions are filled with heart and generosity. Our country is grateful. We send our best wishes for a joyous and memorable evening. May God bless each of you, and may He continue to bless the United States of America. Signed, Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America. You may be seated. The Mayor of the District of Columbia, the Honorable Muriel Bowser, could not be with us this evening, but she has also sent her greetings. As Mayor of the District of Columbia, I am pleased to welcome members of the National Society, Daughters of the American Revolution, to the nation's capital on the occasion of your 128th Continental Congress. This event celebrates the many years of service by the Daughters of the American Revolution in promoting historic preservation, education, and patriotism. This is also an opportunity to highlight the past year, honor outstanding award recipients, plan future initiatives. I thank each of you for volunteering your time, talent, and energy to make a positive change in our communities and country, and I look forward to your continued contributions. On behalf of the residents of Washington, D.C., I wish you a successful event. Signed, Muriel Bowser, Mayor, District of Columbia. It is always good to have the children of the American Revolution attend our Congress. With us this evening are Norma L. Griffin, Senior National President of the National Society, Children of the American Revolution, and McGowan Mackey Storage, National President. Mrs. Griffin and Ms. Storage will bring greetings. Mrs. Griffin.
Madam President General, during the 4th DAR Continental Congress, Harriet Lothrop, regent of the Old Concord chapter in Massachusetts, said, "The children and youth of America have a right to demand the opportunity to secure all these rights and privileges that help forward a perception and adoption of those American principles and institutions for which their ancestors fought and died." On whom does this responsibility rest? Who will see to it that the children and youth have these rights and privileges which, by reason of their youth, they cannot claim and provide for themselves? I appeal for the children and youth of America. Because of Mrs. Lothrop's vision, CAR was founded on April 5th, 1895, and incorporated in the District of Columbia 6 days later. Today, CAR is thankful for Mrs. Lothrop, the NSCAR board members, and the DAR, who understood the need and purpose for this new-founded society. Next April, the National Society of the Children of the American Revolution turns 125 years old. During these years, we have trained the children and youth to become good citizens, develop leadership skills, and promote the love of the USA. Trends and fads come and go, but the CAR is a society that continues with our original purpose. We are grateful to the daughters who have and continue to mentor, coach, and teach today's children. I have the pleasure of introducing a young lady who has grown as a leader under the CAR and DAR guidance. She is a 20-year member of the Surgeon Lawrence Brooks Society in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and has served as Virginia State President, National Chaplain, and National First Vice President. Her enthusiasm, commitment, and love for CAR has grown with each office. DAR is very important in this young lady's life. She joined the Washington Lewis chapter NSDAR at the age of 18, and this is her third year paging at Continental Congress. She is a rising junior at the College of William and Mary with a history and government double major and hopes to attend law school. She is active in her Phi Mu sorority and is the provisional member director. During the school year, she gives tours of the Sir Christopher Wren Building, the oldest academic building still in use in the country. She has a passion for history and has raised more than $50,000 for historic preservation. Madam President General, Ms. Mackie Storage, National President of the National Society of the Children of the American Revolution.
Madam President General, on behalf of the National Society Children of the American Revolution, I bring you greetings and best wishes for an outstanding 128th Continental Congress. It is truly a pleasure and honor to be here this evening. While other little girls wanted to be princesses or rock stars when they grew up, all I wanted to be was a DAR member. My dream finally came true 2 years ago when my application was approved and I was given my national number. But while I was waiting, I always had my beloved CAR, and now it is a privilege to serve as the national president. This year, the national theme for CAR is Foundations of Freedom. The national project has two goals. The first focused on George Washington's boyhood home, Ferry Farm, and the second is to provide CAR members with leadership development opportunities to better equip them with the skills to be tomorrow's leaders. George Washington's boyhood home is where the first president of the United States was shaped into the man he would become and where the foundations of his leadership were laid. Today, it is owned and operated by the George Washington Foundation. Many of the characteristics that made George Washington a great leader took root at Ferry Farm. The first goal of the Foundations of Freedom Project is to raise funds for the reproduction of the Washington Family Desk and to support the development of Ferry Farm's web-based educational initiatives for students to access around the world. The George Washington Foundation is creating educational programs on George's rules of civility and decent behavior. Young George did not receive a formal education in England like his older half-brothers due to his father's death, but with the aid of his mother, learned how to be a gentleman of honesty, integrity, dignity, determination, and self-confidence. The reproduction desk would have been found in the family's parlor and would have been used by all members of the household. The second goal of the project is to highlight the leadership development opportunities that the National Society Children of the American Revolution offers our members. In keeping with our creed, the boys and girls of 1776 took an active part in the War for Independence, so the boys and girls of today have a definite work to do for their country. What better way to become good citizens than develop leadership skills that will last a lifetime? Our mission statement states, the National Society Children of the American Revolution trains good citizens, develops leaders, and promotes love of the United States of America and its heritage among young people. The Foundations of Freedom Project highlights all aspects of this mission, by raising funds for historic reproduction and educational programs at Ferry Farm, while simultaneously striving to equip our members to be the leaders of tomorrow. The CAR thanks the DAR for its continued support and guidance, and asks that you continue to enrich our membership by enrolling your children, grandchildren, nieces, and nephews in the CAR. Madam President General, the CAR is celebrating our 125th anniversary. Mrs. Griffin and I would like to present you with one of our very special 125th pins to commemorate this occasion.
Thank you, Maggie.
This evening, the CAR flag bearer is Ivo Bugino, who is the State President of Maryland and a dual member of the Colonel Tench Tillman Chapter NSDAR and the Hungerford Resolve Society NSCAR. The colonial children presenting gifts to the President General this year are Griffin Wright Dunklin, Wellington Morgan Dunklin, William Haley Dunklin IV, and Charlotte Elizabeth Dunklin of the Young Valley Patriot Society of Texas, and the grandchildren of Chaplain General Mrs. Pamela Wright.
Madam President General, these flowers are for you. From CAR. From CAR.
Thank you very much. Will all of those who transferred from CAR to DAR please stand so that we might recognize you? And will all of the daughters who participate on any level of senior leadership for the children of the American Revolution also please stand? Thank you. The DAR shares a long-standing friendship with the National Society Sons of the American Revolution. Warren M. Altler, President General of the Sons of the American Revolution, will bring greetings on behalf of the Sons of the American Revolution. Mr. Altler.
Thank you.
Thank you, Warren. I think the microphone will pick you up right there. The children threw it down.
Yeah, I thought maybe the stool was for me. And I will tell you, Norma, that wasn't fair. I'm supposed to follow that act? President General Ann Turner Dillon, daughters of the American Revolution, children of the American Revolution, seniors and members, and distinguished guests, it's an honor for me to bring greetings on behalf of the Sons of the American Revolution's nearly 36,000 members to you this evening at your 128th Continental Congress. I read that you're expecting in excess of 4,000 daughters to attend the Continental Congress. I shouldn't be surprised by the numbers. You ladies always do things right. I always love coming to your facilities in this incredible Constitution Hall. You've established facilities to honor your rich history and to support your awesome membership growth. I know you're rapidly approaching the 200,000 mark. And give yourself a hand, please. And I have little doubt that by our country's 250th, you will have 250,000. Both our organizations have come a long way since our inception in the late 1880s, 1890. I wish our male ancestors had been smarter and said yes when the ladies asked to join. But the men weren't, and the rest is history. But the men have gotten a little smarter, just a little, and the ladies forgiving. And I'm grateful to say that the daughters have been incredibly supportive and helpful to the SAR in spite of the early challenges. Today, I'm proud to say we work well together. You have referred many of your husbands, sons, grandsons, nephews to us for membership, and we in turn try to refer our wives, daughters, granddaughters to you for membership. I think for the most part, our chapters, states, and national organizations have been inclusive and have worked together to build our networks. The daughters and sons have many things in common besides the obvious, being descended from patriot ancestors. Both our organizations hold the highest regard and respect for our basic freedoms and principles: freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of peaceful assembly, to name a few. These liberties come at a great cost to our nation. We all must ensure that our nation never forgets the cost of freedom. A favorite quote of mine from former President Ronald Reagan: "Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction." We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. Or one day we will spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it was once like in the United States, where people were free. We each work to inspire and serve our communities. I note with admiration that your community service tracker on your website, well done, shows that you have over 2 million hours this year alone. Incredible. Congratulations. And finally, we have a common organization that we love and support: the Children of the American Revolution. The DAR and SAR have both recognized that the CAR is truly our country's future, and its members are current and future members. Thank you for all you do for this amazing organization. We in the SAR look forward to continuing the partnerships we have made with the DAR and CAR to protect the freedoms earned by our forefathers and foremothers, and to share that message with our children and grandchildren to continue the fight. I wish you a very successful Congress.
Thank you, Warren. Will all members of the Sons of the American Revolution please stand? Welcome, gentlemen. Each year, we are honored with the presence of distinguished guests who are the leaders of other patriotic and hereditary organizations. Please refer to page 14 of your program for the list of names and societies of each of these individuals seated in the President General's reserved section that are with us tonight. Would all of these leaders please now stand as a group so that we may recognize you? Thank you for being with us. It is with gratitude and appreciation that I recognize the Colorado Daughters and my Colorado State Regent, Janine Dobbins, and to thank them for their friendship throughout my membership. Will the Colorado Daughters please stand? You met the current Executive Committee and Vice Presidents General during this evening's processional. Will the executive officers please stand as a group so we may welcome you? Will all of the Vice Presidents General please stand as a group so that we may also welcome you? Our honorary Presidents General have given many years of service to this society. Upon completion of their terms in office, they continue to serve as consultants to the President General. It is always a pleasure to have them present for our Continental Congress. Each one has mentored this President General in her own special way. Would you please hold your applause until they have all been presented? Presley Merritt Wagner, 2004-2007. Linda Gist Calvin, 2007-2010. Marianne Thompson Wright, 2010-2013. And Lynn Forney Young, 2013-2016. Please express our appreciation to these honorary Presidents General. Another group honored by election for life are honorary Vice Presidents General. They too have given decades of service. Would you please stand and remain standing until all have been introduced, and would you please hold your applause until they have all been presented? Carol Rilling, Jane B. Evans, Susan Goncher, Carol D. Belcher, and Linda Wetzel. Please express your appreciation. Additional special guests seated in the President General's box that I would like to welcome are my daughter, Diane Glose, and my cousin, George Orr. Would you please stand so we may greet you? We are also delighted to have in attendance guests of your National Executive Officers seated in the reserved section. Please hold your applause until all have been introduced. Chaplain General Pamela Wright's son, Dr. William Halley Dunklin III, and additional family, Dr. Robert and Brenda Morgan, Julia Ruggles, and Marilyn Edwards Roberts. Recording Secretary General Morgan Lake's husband, Dr. Thad Lake. Organizing Secretary General Nancy Hemrick's daughter, Lee Hunt, and nephew, Joseph Monaghan. Registrar General Mary Frisch's daughter, Libby Doddridge, and grandsons, Nate and Hank Doddridge, and cousin, Marjorie Turley, and Marjorie's husband, Dr. John Turley. Historian General Ginger Trader's nephew and his wife, Paul and Elizabeth Hudson. Librarian General Pat Hatfield's fiancé, David Tissoni, and friends, David and Elizabeth Salak. You may now greet these guests. It is also a pleasure to introduce the personal pages of the President General. Would you please stand as you are presented? Co-Chief Personal Pages, Melissa Wetzel, New Jersey, Jacqueline Leahy, District of Columbia, Stacy Gerardo, Florida. Assistant Co-Chief Personal Pages, Michelle Caputi Reynolds, Virginia, Stephanie Chazet, Georgia, and Pages, Emily Orr, Texas, and my cousin. Elise Richardson, New York, and Megan Sweeney, Colorado. Thank you all for your efficient and dedicated service. The professionalism and the dedication of the DAR staff makes it a pleasure and a privilege to work with them here at our national headquarters. Would those DAR employees who are in attendance tonight please stand? And would you please join me in expressing sincere gratitude? Sincere gratitude to these men and women for all they do. to support the work of the National Society and their assistance to this officer daily. Tonight, as we gather for the opening night ceremony of the 128th Continental Congress, we have a very special treat for you. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor and a privilege to introduce our distinguished speaker. I have only known him through the volumes of press that he has received. Though he prefers to call himself a farmer, his accomplishments go far beyond tilling the earth's soil. He has served as a member of the House of Burgesses in Virginia and as a delegate to the Continental Congress. He has received an honorary degree of Doctor of Law from Harvard College, Yale College, and other institutions. He is a member of the American Philosophical Society and the President General of the and the President General of the Society of the Cincinnati. In the French and Indian War, he served as commander of the Virginia Militia. Our guest served as commander-in-chief of the Continental Army during the War of American Independence. He was the presiding officer of the Constitutional Convention. In 1789, he took the oath of office and was sworn in as our nation's first chief magistrate, and is now standing in his second term in office. Will you please stand? Ladies and gentlemen, His Excellency, the President of the United States of America, General George Washington.
There's no need to stand on ceremony. Set yourselves down. What a great honor it is to be here in the Federal City. I see that the development continues, actually, in the permanent seat of government. We are, by my count in Philadelphia City, the current capital, we are up to 70. Can you imagine? 70 federal employees. It is absolutely remarkable. In any event, it is my great honor. You know, I was thinking what it is that I would speak to you about, because it occurred to me that all of you are fairly well versed in the history of the great contest of our independency. But I decided that as an older fellow, it is my prerogative to spin back. And you probably don't know the story from my perspective, so with your grace and understanding, I should probably begin with the comment that some of you may find a bit unusual coming out of my mouth. And that is, when I was a younger fellow, I was a very happy, very loyal British subject. Because we had all the rights, we had all the privileges, we had all the franchises of Englishmen here in what we called British America, at least the ones that were important to us. And the most important thing of all, and this is critically important to your understanding of your history, is that we governed ourselves for nigh on 150 years, going back to the 1600s. We adjudicated our own cases in our own courtrooms. We raised our own money when we needed it for 150 years. This would come ultimately to bite the King of England on the back of his neck. In a manner of speaking, that's the story that I want to share with you. Now, how do I share this story? Well, I should tell you that I'm a third-generation Virginian. I was born on a farm. May I see by a show of hands how many of you were born and raised on a farm? Oh, I feel right at home here. Although I must tell you, if I would ask the question in my day, more than 50% of you would raise your hands. I don't know what the rest of you are doing, but be that as it may, I was raised on a farm, and I think that everything that anyone needs to learn about life can be learned by being raised on a farm. You know, many of you see me as a statesman, you see me as a soldier. You need to know that I see myself first and foremost as a farmer, but I didn't always want to be a farmer. I didn't want to be plowing the red clay soil of Virginia. I wanted to be plowing the 7 seas. I wanted to follow in the footsteps of my beloved half-brother, Lawrence Washington. He had been a Royal Marine, fought with the Royal Navy, named a property that he inherited after a British admiral, Admiral Edward Vernon. You may be familiar with that property. Be that as it may, I will tell you that when I was about 14, 15 years of age, Lawrence was successful in obtaining for himself a commission as a midshipman in the Royal Navy on a frigate. And my mother absolutely forbade me to accept that commission. I was very upset. She told me that you may think of yourself, George, as a very proper English fellow, but our lordly masters over in Great Britain, particularly their blue-coated naval aristocracy, they look at us as nothing more than lowly Americans. And I didn't understand what she meant at the time, but I came to understand what she meant. You know, sometimes I wonder how my life might have been different if I had joined the Royal Navy. Actually, I wonder how your lives might have been different, but that is conjecture on my part. Be that as it may, I became a surveyor, and ultimately I changed professions when I am 21 years of age. And at 21, I become Major George Washington of the Virginia Colonial Regiment. Now, those of you who have served in the military, particularly officers, may be scratching your heads, asking how does one go from being a civilian to being Major George Washington at 21 years of age? And the answer is, I purchased my commission. It is the way it was done in Great Britain. It's the way it was done in Europe. Believe me, if I had had more money, I would have purchased a higher rank, but I did not. But I will tell you, the logic is that you cannot have the rabble, the common man, lead the military. And so only men of means, whether they had any military ability or intelligence for that matter, was of course secondary. But I purchased a commission as a major, and I became a soldier at a remarkable time, because sabers were rattling yet again, and they were rattling betwixt Great Britain and her hereditary enemy, France, always at war with France, short periods of peace. However, this time it was shaping up to be a war of empire. It would ultimately be a war fought for 7 years, cleverly referred to as the 7 Years' War. And it would be fought as far away as the Philippines and India. It would be fought in Africa. It would be fought in Europe. But it would be fought most extensively in North America. And that portion of the 7 Years' War was called the French and Indian War. As a Virginian, I called it the French War. That portion of the war would be fought over nothing less than the entire future of this continent, all the lands to the westward. Here's the problem. There are 3 great nations that all lay claim to the lands to the westward, what we called the Ohio country. The French, they lay claim to it based on exploration. I'm sure many of you have heard of a French explorer. His name was La Salle. You've heard of La Salle? He was there 150 years before I ever was. He marked everything, claiming everything for king and country. French, they claim it based on exploration. The second great nation to claim the Ohio country in its entirety, the Aboriginals, the Indians. They had lived there for more than 1,000 years. They claim it based on residency. And then, of course, the third great nation, Great Britain. And we lay claim to it based on nothing more and nothing less than a royal proclamation, the king's signature on a piece of parchment. You laugh, that's serious business. And so it's not shaping up very well for the Ohio country, and I volunteer for what will be the very first mission of what will become the French and Indian War, which is to carry through the Pennsylvania wilderness up to the northwest corner of the colony of Pennsylvania an eviction notice to the French, saying you must get off of British land. And I give it to the commanding officer of Fort LeBoeuf, which is nigh on to the Lake Niagara. You're familiar with that? Lake Erie. And he sends to Montreal. He needs to get an answer. He cannot give me an answer himself. But ultimately, the French answer comes. I do not speak a lick of French, but I knew enough to understand the French response to the British eviction notice, which was, au contraire. It is you, British, that must leave French land. And it goes down the hill from there. I am back in the western Pennsylvania wilderness every year for the subsequent years throughout my middle 20s. We pass an area where 3 rivers cross in western Pennsylvania, Great Britain tries to build a fort there. We're unsuccessful. The French are successful. They build Fort Duquesne. And it is a rather bloody war out in western Pennsylvania. It's also fought in the Mohawk Valley in New York colony as well. We are ultimately successful. We push the French out of virtually all of North America. And this was a remarkable and critical time for me. Why? Because I began to learn about military leadership, and I also got in touch with what my mother was referring to when I was a 14-year-old lad and wanted to be a midshipman on a frigate, because I got a very clear understanding of the way our lordly masters felt about us here in British America. My men were not paid the same as British regular soldiers. I was not paid the same as a British colonel. By the way, I was promoted from major to lieutenant colonel, from lieutenant colonel to colonel, commander-in-chief of all the forces of Virginia. That didn't mean a great deal to my command structure, the British regular soldiers. But as I said, we are successful. We push the French out of virtually all of North America. I tried to improve things for the Virginia Regiment. I actually traveled 600 miles to Boston town to meet with the royal governor there. He was also the military governor in North America, but I was handed my hat and I left with my tail between my legs. However, as I said, we take over Fort Duquesne, we push the French out of most of North America, and then for a variety of reasons, I resign my commission. I return to farming life back at Mount Vernon. My friends will tell you that my resignation had absolutely nothing to do whatsoever with pay disputes for my men or authority disputes for myself. They will tell you that it had everything to do with a lady. And I think perhaps they were right. I was engaged to the widow of Colonel Daniel Custis, her name Martha Dandridge Custis, and on 12th night, January 6th, 1759, she became Mrs. George Washington. What a night that was. We burned more candles than most people do in an entire year. We danced into the wee hours of the morning. The fiddler had to wave a flag of surrender. His fingers wouldn't work any longer. Mrs. Washington and I enjoy 15 uninterrupted years at Mount Vernon. She calls those the golden years. But everything in our world, everything in your history, everything for your ancestors is about to change. Excuse me. Your health. Does no one know 18th century protocol? When someone wishes you a health, if you don't have a drink in your hand, don't raise an imaginary drink, but you return the wish in kind to your health. Thank you. To the United States of America. Wonderful. To the Congress, never mind. (1764), about 5 years after I married, actually. My wedding had nothing to do with this. The King of England goes to his counting room and he opens the doors, so to speak, and he almost falls over with apoplexy. Why? Great Britain is nigh on bankrupt. He turns to his ministers and he says, do something about this. And his ministers put their heads together and they come back to the King of England and they say, Your Majesty, we just finished fighting a very expensive war against the French. Most of the cost of that war was spent in British America. Let us, Your Majesty, turn to the American colonials, and we shall refill the treasury of Great Britain. I tell you this because if you have not made the connection, it is critical to your understanding of your history that you are clear about the fact that the French and Indian War and the cost thereof was directly causative of the War of American Independency, and it had everything to do with money. For the next 11 years, the King of England, his ministers, and many, not all, but many of the members of Parliament systematically strip us of our freedom. They usurp our liberties, and they reach into our pockets and into our purses in ways they had never done before. This is also critical to your understanding of your history, because if you are not familiar with this fact, it's important. It will be the first time in the history of the British Empire that the king causes direct taxation of his colonies. It never happened before. 11 years of this systematic usurpation of our freedom, and what many of us saw as the absolute utter arrogance of an island nation trying to control a continent. 1764, we are hit with the Sugar Act and the Currency Act. This upsets many American colonials. Committees of correspondence begin to form betwixt the various colonies. It's not like that had never happened before, but it was pretty rare. It's the same year, 1764, that Mr. James Otis, a rather hot-headed fellow from Massachusetts Bay, stands up at a session of the Massachusetts Colonial Legislature and shouts in a very ungentlemanly way, "Gentlemen, taxation without representation is tyranny," which becomes a rallying cry in the early days of our cause. But the truth is, if we had been given a voting voice in Parliament, it would have been a small voting voice, easily brushed aside, and our problems would not have gone away. It continues. We are hit with the Quartering Act. Imagine coming home to your domicile, and there are 2 foreign soldiers living there. Some of them are gentlemen. Most of them are pretty rough stuff. And they're also eating your food. And they're also taking on secondary occupations when they're not doing soldierly duties. For example, they might become longshoremen in the port of Boston town, loading things on and off of ships. The problem is they have taken your husband's work, your brother's work, your uncle's, grandfather's, son's work. You're not very happy. Then, of course, we are hit out of the blue with the infamous Stamp Act. You probably heard of the Stamp Act. May I see by a show of hands how many of you are engaged in commerce or business in any way, shape, or form? A goodly number. 2 pence for every single piece of paper you use in your business. You never had to pay that before. May I ask another question? How many of you are officers of the court, attorneys, barristers, solicitors, if you're willing to admit it? Counselor, 4 pence for every single piece of paper that he uses in his legal practice. And I don't need to tell you all that lawyers can generate a fair amount of paper. They're going to pass that on to you. I want to see if I can get a little bit more participation. How many of you have a diploma of any type? 2 pounds. 2 pounds. Counselor, you enjoy reading the newspaper? I'm sorry, it's text. My apologies to you. I see that you are a wilderness man. You cannot read, I understand, but you enjoy going to a tavern, having the news read to you when you play cards. His playing cards are taxed. And, Madam President General, your secret will out. We know you like to play dice. Your dice are taxed. The Stamp Act contains 119 paragraphs of taxes. And we do the only thing that we can do. We stop buying British-made goods. We hit the merchants of England, particularly London, in their purses and pockets. And they complain to the members of Parliament, who speak to the ministers, who talk to the king. And the king actually rescinds the Stamp Act. It looks like our resistance is working. But the very same day that the king tears up the Stamp Act, he signs into law the Declaratory Act. I'll lay wager very few of you know about the Declaratory Act, but it's important in your history. The Declaratory Act states that in all cases whatsoever, and I'm paraphrasing, the King of England can enact legislation over his colonial subjects and tax his colonial subjects. In other words, just because we are tearing up the Stamp Act today, do not think that we will not do to you what we want to do when we want to do it. It sounds like an angry father, an abusive father yelling at a child. And that's the way the king felt at this point. He thought that he would say, hush, and like a dutiful child, we would go stand in a corner. I have one question for all of you. Did we British Americans go stand in a corner? No. He picked a fight with the wrong child. It is true. It continues. There's armed conflict up in New York City and a very serious event up in Boston town. Armed soldiers, unarmed civilians in Boston town. That event, 5 Bostonians killed, 6 wounded. The first to die, a free African American, Crispus Attucks. He becomes the first martyr in the American cause of independency. It was referred to by Mr. Samuel Adams as a massacre, and it boiled the blood of people all up and down the eastern seaboard. It continues. The Townsend Acts. The Townsend Acts tax paper, paint, glass, lead, and something that we enjoy drinking a great deal. Tea. We stop buying British-made goods. Non-importation has the effect. It is torn up. The Townsend Acts are rescinded. But the King keeps in force the Tea Act. In fact, he strengthens it. You may not shop any longer for tea. You must buy it from the British East India Company at the price they set, the amount that they will allow, the delivery they will provide. No shopping. This upsets so many American colonials. How many of you are here from Maryland? You rode out in Annapolis and burnt a tea tax collection ship down to the waterline. There were events in South Carolina. There were events all up and down the eastern seaboard. Any of you here Philadelphians? You all greeted a ship's captain. The ship was named the Polly into Philadelphia. A committee of public safety greeted the captain and said, Your Honor, you're welcome to do your business here in Philadelphia, but we don't want you to unload your tea. And if you do unload your tea, this other committee wants to have a discussion with you. And they had tar and feathers and a rail. He does not unload his tea. But of course, up in Boston town, there is a meeting of Bostonians at the South Meeting Hall. And they are angry. They have been meeting off and on for weeks. And at a certain moment, when the meeting was going nowhere, Samuel Adams shouts a coded sentence. And as the sentence is finished, 50 or 60 Boston men absent themselves from the meeting. And they go and they dress up as Indians under cover of darkness, and they board 3 ships in the Boston harbor, and they toss almost 400 chests of tea into the harbor that night. I thought that it was a very ungentlemanly thing, and there were other ways to accomplish that. But be that as it may, it gives you a glimpse into some of the differences of opinions from colony to colony. The king is not pleased. He hands down a series of punishments, punitive legislation called the Coercive Acts, but we renamed that. Anybody know what we called the Coercive Acts? You are bright as fresh paint. The Intolerable Acts, and they were intolerable. For example, the port of Boston town shut down overnight. This is how these people made their living. The wilderness man, if he wants to go hunting on his own land, no, understand what I'm saying. He wants to go hunting on the land that he owns. He needs to buy a tax stamp. The king brings the border of Canada down into New York overnight with the stroke of a pen. He's not having problems with the Canadians. And there are many other coercive acts. And this was too much for us to take. We finally decided that we will come together in a general congress in Philadelphia City. We will meet in the Carpenters Guild Hall in September of 1774. We called it the Philadelphia, I think you all call it the First Continental Congress, am I right? We didn't call it that. We didn't know there was going to be a Second Continental Congress. We called it the Philadelphia Congress, or the General Congress. And we came together. Georgia doesn't send anyone, but they sent a strong letter of support, so I include them in the number. This is critical. I want you to answer this quickly, because without thought, we came together. We were absolute strangers to each other. We were citizens of 13 separate what? I'm a general. I love it when they fall into my trap. You're right. That was our legal status. We were colonists. But you need to change the way you think about your history. We were citizens of 13 separate countries. My country was Virginia. We were meeting in the country of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvanians would spend their entirety in their country. They would never set foot in the country of Maryland, or the country of Delaware, or the country of the Jerseys, or the country of New York, let alone the Ohio wilderness country. We had 13 different economies. We had 13 different currencies. We had 13 different armies. At the time of the first Congress, Connecticut was at war with Pennsylvania and Virginia. David and Goliath. 9 of the colonies had standing navies. We had different ways of doing everything. For example, I was a delegate from Virginia, a younger Colonel Washington, and a rather short-statured fellow comes rushing towards me with his hand out, introducing himself as Mr. John Adams of Massachusetts Bay. Actually, it was more like this, but I see that hand outstretched towards me, and I take a slight step back. And he, being a New Englander, he closes the distance with his hand out. And I take another step back. Do you understand? 13 different countries, different customs. In my day, from Maryland southward, gentlemen bow. From Pennsylvania northward, gentlemen proffer their hands. It's a miracle that anything was accomplished. But what was accomplished? Simple non-importation agreements. We agreed that we would stop buying British-made goods. But what really happened at that first Congress is that we came together as Americans for the very first time. Still stirred by the words of Mr. Patrick Henry. Mr. Patrick Henry had said just 2 months earlier, "I am not a Virginian, but an American." American. American. This was a derogatory term used by our lordly masters to describe us. Backwater American, provincial American, lowly Americans, and now we call ourselves Americans defiantly. We agreed we would come back together again 1 year later to see how the non-importation agreements were working. It does not take a year. We are back together again as a result of the events of April 19th, 1775. Please tell me you know what happened on that day. The battles of Lexington and Concord on the heels of the midnight ride of about 50 or 60 alarm riders. You thought I was going to say something else. British troops march on those 2 towns. They are going to arrest patriots. They are going to confiscate black powder and weaponry. And they were met by armed American resistance. The War of Independence had begun. Congress comes back in session. Congress comes back in session with a very full agenda. The first order of business, and again, I was a delegate. When I left Mount Vernon that time, there was menace in the air. And by the by, on my ride up to Philadelphia City, we would pass villages or farmers or hamlets, and some people would remove their covers and cheer us, and others kept covered, and they scowled at us. Why scowling? Why cheering? Do not forget an important fact in your history, that 33% of British Americans were sons and daughters of liberty. 33% were loyal to king and country, and 33% of them were right in the middle. And those percentums held throughout the entirety of the war, which made it very difficult for both the British and the Americans to prosecute that war. We come in session. The first thing we do is that we agree that we will raise up arms against our king. This is something no colony in the history of humankind had ever done successfully. And we were going to do it against the most powerful fighting force on earth, the British Army, the British Navy. Second order of business, we send a petition to the King of England telling him that we want to continue to be your loyal subjects forever, but we have governed ourselves for 150 years, and we would like to continue doing so, and by the by, we want representation in Parliament. You should know, as hard as this is for you all to understand, I live in a 4-mile-an-hour world. We send this petition to the King of England in May of 1775. We get the King's answer back in August of 1775. And the King's answer is as clear as the sun in the meridian sky. You are in rebellion. And he lets us know that he will stop at nothing to bring us to justice. Third order of business, the delegates appoint me unanimously to be the commander-in-chief of the new Continental Army of the United Colonies of America. We would not declare independency for 13 more months. I was scared to death. I stood up, my knees were shaking, my voice quivering. I said to them, "Gentlemen, I am honored at this rank that you have bestowed upon me. I am not worthy. But I shall serve our glorious cause for no pay and for no profit." I sat down. You could hear a pin hit the floor. Everyone in that room knew that our world, perhaps the entire world, would never be the same again. You know how this story ends. We as a people, your ancestors, raise up these United States of America to make a better life for most, not all, of the inhabitants of the land. And then we have to decide what kind of country we're going to be. And make no mistake about that, because there are a wide range of options and opinions, including those ill-conceived who wanted to make me what? King. And I pushed back in the strongest of ways. You know, when I was commissioned as Commander-in-Chief back at the beginning of the war, I wrote of my commissioning to Mrs. Washington back at Mount Vernon. And that was mid-June, 1775. I told her I would be home for Christmas Eve. I did not tell her which Christmas Eve, but I literally walked across the threshold of our home at Mount Vernon on Christmas Eve, 8.5 years later. So when they suggested that I might become king, I pushed back and said to them, how dare you? We have just cast off the yoke of tyranny. I did not fight for 8.5 years so that I might become George I of America. But you need to understand the context of these times, because when we signed our Declaration of American Independence, which I always call the promise, and then when we signed our Constitution, again later, which I always call the delivery upon this promise, America is the only nation on earth, I need to repeat that, we are the only country on this planet that is not under the control of men and women of absolute power. Every other nation, kings, queens, lords, ladies, sheiks, viziers, caliphs, potentates, maharajas, mikados, emperors, even a tsarina, I ran out of fingers. We alone, for the first time in human history, raise up a nation based on ideas and constrained by the Constitution, the laws. I was elected unanimously to the presidency. I was tired. I wanted to go back home, but I was of two minds. I wanted to see the stewardship of the country continue in a certain way. But I will tell you how I felt about learning of my election. I wrote to General Henry Knox. Do you know Henry Knox? Commander of artillery, a classic example of the American officer or soldier. He was a Boston bookseller. He learned everything about artillery and about siege by reading books or eavesdropping conversations of British officers in his shop. Henry, you know, I shouldn't tell you that. I'm going to tell you. Henry is the biggest human being I have ever seen in my life. There is only one person larger than Henry, and that is his lovely wife, Lucy. And the two of them, they are remarkable. They defy physics on the dance floor. They were like two feathers. Never mind, I am so sorry. I wrote to Henry Knox as I approached the presidency that as I move forward towards the executive seat of government, I feel like a condemned man being led to my own execution. Because the entire rest of the world did not believe that man could govern himself. The entirety of the rest of the nations felt that man could not govern himself. As Mr. Jefferson said, that a few were born booted and spurred to ride the saddles on the backs of the rest of us. The experiment continues, but as I have said from the outset, arriving at the federal city on this day, in your day, I see that the experiment continues. And I see that the sacrifices made by your ancestors were not sacrifices made in vain. And so I hope that you have appreciated this small narration of the story of the formation of this country, at least through my rather older eyes at this point. And please know that I am ever your humble and your obedient servant. Thank you kindly.
Now that we've enjoyed an unforgettable interlude with the father of our country, let us welcome the performer whose portrayal not only enthralled this entire audience, but also achieved the impossible. Through his masterful embodiment of our first president, Dean Melissa convinced us all to suspend disbelief and experience what it feels like to engage with the magnificent leader whose legacy looms largest in the formative chapters of the American story. Part actor, part scholar, and a complete master of his craft, Mr. Melissa devoted years of studying George Washington in hopes of bringing this near mythical figure to life through historical interpretive acting. I do not need to tell you that he succeeded. As devoted students of American history, we daughters know that any form of fine art offering modern-day audiences a window to the past has a great impact. We recognize and appreciate Mr. Melissa's extraordinary ability to educate and entertain the countless people who, after seeing him perform, come away with a deeper understanding of our nation's first president. With his stage presence and commitment to historical accuracy, Mr. Melissa has captivated audiences at renowned sites including Mount Vernon, the Smithsonian Institution, the Museum of the American Revolution, Independence National Historical Park, the National Constitution Center, and now DAR's Constitution Hall as well. Tonight, we present Mr. Melissa with the DAR History Award Medal, an honor reserved for individuals whose study and promotion of American history has significantly advanced the understanding of our nation's past. This award recognizes not only the powers of performance he displayed for us on this stage, but also the thousands of acts of careful preparation that one by one brought that performance into being. Dean Melissa gives people a chance to meet George Washington. He is proof that when an educated, talented, charismatic performer becomes the character he is portraying, the impossible becomes possible. Please welcome Dean Melissa.
Thank you.
And please, let's turn and have a photograph together.
Yes, please. I need to call my mother. To tell the story. This may not come as a surprise to you, but not everyone out there knows the story of the formation of this country as well as you all do. So my mission is to tell that story and to do it in a way that is accessible and relevant and understandable. Even in his own day, General Washington knew that this story was all but a miracle. He wrote, this is a direct quotation, "If historiographers should be hardy enough to fill the page of history with the advantages that have been gained with unequal number on the part of America in the course of this contest, and attempt to relate the distressing circumstances under which they have been obtained, it is more than probable that posterity will bestow on their labors the epithet of fiction, for it will not be believed that such a force as Great Britain has employed for 8 years in this country could be baffled in their plan of subjugating it by numbers infinitely less, composed of men oftentimes half-starved, always in rags, without pay, and experiencing, at times, every species of distress which human nature is capable of undergoing. What your ancestors experienced firsthand. My work, year after year, at Mount Vernon, at the Smithsonian, National Park Service, historical sites, etc., is to solely tell the story. I am very humbled by your recognition and this kind award. And Madam President General, I wish that the National Society Daughters of the American Revolution will continue to prosper and continue to join me in telling the story. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Melissa, for your remarkable commitment to bringing history alive and for that very enjoyable performance. Now let's see how many of you can get the answer to this clue. What is the DAR? Not only has the DAR been a clue on this immensely popular game show, we have also had the pleasure of hosting Jeopardy in Constitution Hall 4 times over the past 20 years. When the show travels to Washington, D.C., they transform Constitution Hall into their home and in just a matter of days film up to 3 weeks of shows. DAR has developed a great relationship with the Jeopardy production team, and they seem to have a pretty good time when they are here. These are just a few highlights from some of Jeopardy's time in Constitution Hall over the years.
From Washington, D.C., this is Power Players Week on Jeopardy! And now, here is the host of Jeopardy, Alex Trebek.
Thank you very much, Johnny Gilbert. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm back at my favorite venue for Jeopardy remotes, Constitution Hall, here in the heart of our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. How long has Jeopardy been around? If you look very carefully in Lincoln's left hand, you will see a Jeopardy signaling button. Today we're starting a new tournament, a celebrity tournament with a twist. We call it Power Players Week.
20th century women for 1,600.
Answer there, the Daily Double.
200. I don't know anything about women.
Okay. That's what your wife said.
Come on. Come on.
You want a piece of me? You want a piece of this? These are people who sometimes make the news, sometimes report the news, sometimes comment on the news. These are the power plays. Oliver.
Who is the Manson family?
No, we need you to be more complete than that. The name of the band.
They call themselves the Manson family, don't they?
No. Ariana Wolf. The group is called Marilyn Manson. Marilyn Manson. You lost a little bit there, Oliver, but think again.
Am I wrong, though? It's not a wrong, no.
Yes, you're wrong.
Is that wrong?
You were wrong. Life is tough. He's the shadowy Watergate source. 2 words, 4 letters, and 6 letters. Peggy.
Who is Deep Throat?
You are right. Now let's pause. Wait a minute. We're going to pause here, but let's not go away just yet. Bob, we've been waiting over 30 years for this. Who is Deep Throat? Come on, you can make headlines once again on national television. Would you all join me, please, in welcoming the person who will deliver the clue? Your mayor, Muriel Bowser.
Thank you.
Please welcome Dr. Jill Biden. Well, look at that. Here is Senator McCain. Anderson.
Who's Afraid of Virginia? Oh, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf?
No. Oi. Maria Okwuisi. What is Cat on a Hot Tin Roof? Anderson, don't beat up on yourself. That's our job. When I go back home to Los Angeles at the end of the week, I'm really going to miss this place because of people like you and all of the wonderful people we have met here at DAR Constitution Hall.
Constitution Hall looks great, doesn't it? After Jeopardy's most recent visit to Constitution Hall in 2016, we discussed how well-known Alex Trebek is as host of the show, but his personal and extensive charity work is less well-known. To help you know more about this remarkable man, please welcome Cynthia Parnell, National Chairman, Americanism Committee, who will elaborate. Mrs. Parnell.
Madam President General, the DAR Americanism Medal honors a naturalized U.S. citizen for outstanding achievement in service to community and country. In addition to recognizing extraordinary service, leadership, and patriotism, the Americanism Medal also celebrates those who assist immigrants with educational and advancement opportunities. We are honored to present the Americanism Medal to a man who fits all of these categories. Alex Trebek was born in Sudbury, Ontario, Canada, and attended the University of Ottawa. His work in all forms of broadcasting led him to the United States in 1973, where he became a citizen in 1998. His many years as an award-winning journalist, television host, and spokesman are very well known. But what is not known are his years spent helping students, active duty military, the environment, the arts, and the film industry. Just a few examples of his dedication to community and country include his participation in over 12 USO tours, the donation of lands to the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy, and the creation of multiple university scholarships in both the U.S. and Canada. He also supports World Vision project work in third world countries toward the elimination of child poverty, and he supports Smile Train. He directs numerous Trebek Family Foundation grants towards the benefits of the arts, healthcare, the American Film Institute, the American Foundation for the Blind, and the Children's Burn Foundation. He is a 6-time Emmy Award winner and was inducted into the National Association of Broadcasters Broadcasting Hall of Fame in 2018. Madam President General, though he is unable to join us tonight, it is my distinct honor to present the DAR Americanism Medal to Mr. Alex Trebek.
Thank you, Cindy. As many of you are aware, Mr. Trebek was recently diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. While he continues to respond well to his cancer treatment and is encouraged by positive medical update, his doctors recently advised him that cross-country travel might negatively affect his progress and treatment schedule. Mr. Trebek expressed to us how much he had wanted to be here to accept this award in person and was very sorry that his plans were forced to change. However, he was gracious enough to take the time to send us a recorded message. Would you please direct your attention to the screens?
Thank you, Madam President, and Ms. Parnell, thank you for that very extravagant introduction. Truly appreciated. Hello, everyone. I'm very sorry I can't be with you in person this evening for this very special event, but as you saw in the video, Jeopardy and I have had some really good times here at Constitution Hall, and it is my fervent wish that in the not-too-distant future, we have the opportunity to come back and do another tournament for you folks. Now, when I received the first letter from the DAR informing me that they wanted to honor me with the Spirit of Americanism Award, my initial reaction was, no way. It's not going to happen. As I told the audience at the Emmys about a month ago, I'm not a big fan of sympathy votes, and I thought the DAR was being unusually generous and very sympathetic towards me because of my health condition, and I felt very uncomfortable because of that. But then I reread the letter that President General Dillon sent me, and I noticed that it was postmarked 5 days before my health announcement. Well, that changed everything, didn't it? Sympathy was no longer a factor. I changed my mind. I said, I will accept. Perhaps I even deserve this award. Not too sure about that. You can take that statement with a grain of salt. As you all know, the Spirit of Americanism Award is presented to an American citizen who was not born in this country. And boy, there are a lot of us out there in America right now. And some of these people have major accomplishments. Think about it. 2 former secretaries of state, Madeleine Albright, Henry Kissinger, a co-founder of one of the world's largest corporations, countless people in the show business and arts communities who have made major contributions to the culture in America. But we all have 2 things in common. First of all, most of us wanted to be here. We made a conscious decision to come to America because of the opportunities that were available here that perhaps were not available to us in our birth countries. And secondly, we have all come to deeply love this country. In my case, it happened quite naturally. I met and fell in love with a beautiful young American girl from Long Island, New York. We got married in 1990 and began raising 2 beautiful children. My career prospered. I started to think about ways in which I could give back. Here's my idea of the true spirit of Americanism. It's an outstretched hand and a gentle voice that says, hey, through no fault of your own, you had a child who was born with serious birth defects. This is a major ordeal for you, one that can't be borne alone. Let us help you. Through no fault of your own, your job disappeared, it vanished. You can no longer support your family the way you did before. Oh, I know you got a replacement job, but it doesn't pay you anywhere near the salary you were earning prior to that event. You're in danger of losing your home. You can't afford health insurance. You certainly can't afford to send your kids to college. For that, they're going to have to take out big loans that they won't be able to repay for 15 or 20 years after graduation. Let us help you. It's that same hand reaching across two vast oceans, across international boundaries, and saying to foreign leaders, hey, we understand that you govern your country very differently than we do here in the United States. You are not a democratic republic. Some of you oppress your own citizens. Some of your people worship a superior being in religions that have become xenophobic and dangerous. That's okay. As long as you don't cross the line and threaten us, America will not raise a hand against you. In fact, we want to join hands with you to help solve some of the problems that are endangering people all around the planet. Speaking of the planet, it is in trouble. It didn't happen overnight. It's taken 150 years to get to where we are today. But we have to do something about it. The Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu, I think, said it best when he wrote, "A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." And that's what we need to do. Take that single step so that future generations of Americans, our descendants, will be able to look back at us and say, you know what? Our grandparents had some tough decisions to make. But because they made those decisions, the world is a better place in which to live. I think all of us need to look at our country and figure out whether America lives up to the ideal America that we have here and here. If it doesn't, if there's room for improvement, and there always is, let us act. Is the image of America that is projected abroad one that we feel comfortable with? Or is there a way in which we can become better neighbors? I truly believe that if each and every one of us takes that single step, one step at a time, then before too long, each and every one of you will be able to say, you know what? I think I'm worthy of the Spirit of Americanism Award. But for this year, and thanks to the DAR, the award is mine, and I'm happy to accept it. I accept it with humility, and I accept it with a great deal of pride. Thank you very much, and God bless America.
We congratulate Mr. Tebek, and we will be sure to send him best wishes from the DAR on a speedy recovery. The next night's honoree is an organization sharing a commitment with the DAR to provide encouragement and financial aid to the nation's promising young students. Since 1984, the Horatio Alger Association has awarded $159 million in scholarship funds to deserving students across the country. In 2019 alone, the organization awarded $21 million to 2,500 scholars, now fortified with resources and inspiration to guide them along the path to success. Not only does the Horatio Alger Association provide financial aid to students, but the association also provides resources and mentoring opportunities for the scholars. A devotion to education is not the only connection between the National Society and the Horatio Alger Association. For the past 16 years, DAR Constitution Hall has been proud to host the Horatio Alger Award ceremony. During the event, the association confers life membership on 10 to 13 individuals who demonstrate leadership, perseverance, a commitment to higher education, and the vision to achieve a better future. Now let's turn our attention to a brief video of highlights from this year's ceremonies.
Welcome to the 72nd Annual Horatio Alger Ceremony at DAR Constitution Hall. We're here tonight to celebrate the outstanding achievements of the newest class of Horatio Alger members.
It takes two things to be successful. You need to be sure you get all the formal education you can. It'll open doors. Then you got to work harder than just about anybody else on earth.
May we in the United States never take our freedoms for granted. Thank you so much.
I hope you never feel those mountains in the distance, and never settle for the path of least resistance.
For each of these new members, they're determined to become the best version of themselves. And as they rise to achieve their fullest potential, they lift others along the way. Ambition has played a defining role in their lives.
Horatio Alger scholars represent the next generation of great Americans. They represent hopes as we envision the impact that they will one day have on our nation.
The members of the Horatio Alger Association have overcome adversity to achieve excellence. And perhaps most importantly, they continue to pay it forward.
By celebrating core values such as integrity, compassion, determination, and personal aspiration, the Horatio Alger Association strives to present young people with positive modern-day role models. Another key goal is to prove that the American dream remains within the reach for all. As descendants of our nation's founding generation, we daughters can certainly identify with that mission. It is my pleasure to honor a kindred organization that for 72 years has worked to keep the promise of America alive for future generations by inspiring the scholars and the leaders of tomorrow. Tonight, the Horatio Alger Association becomes the latest recipient of the President General's Medallion. This honor is reserved for those who exemplify the spirit of the Daughters of the American Revolution through their exceptional service to our country and their commitment to historic preservation, education, and patriotism. I can think of no more appropriate honoree than the Horatio Alger Association. Here to accept the President General's Medallion on behalf of the Horatio Alger Association is the Honorable Barbara Barrett, who serves as the organization's vice president and will become the Horatio Alger Association's first female president later this year. Her accomplishments are as varied as they are impressive. Highlights of a career spanning business, politics, education, and diplomacy include a degree from the Sandra Day O'Connor College of Law at Arizona State University, service as U.S. Ambassador to Finland, and a seat on the Defense Advisory Committee on Women in the Services. Barrett's fascination with space played into her professional life as well. A certified astronaut, she serves as chairman of the Aerospace Corporation and on the board of the National Air and Space Museum. Now she stands on the cusp of a prestigious new chapter. In May, President Donald Trump nominated Barrett to serve as the next Secretary of the Air Force, the top civilian position in that branch of the military. We are delighted that she has made time to join us this evening. Ambassador Barrett.
Very much. Oh my goodness, it comes to blame. Comes to blame, of course. Thank you. Thank you very much. On behalf of the Horatio Alger Association, thank you very much. The Daughters of the American Revolution and the Horatio Alger Association have a long-standing relationship, and our missions are undeniably interconnected, both rooted in a love of the country and a belief in the core values that define America. The Horatio Alger Association, well, we're a little newer than the Daughters of the American Revolution. We were established just in 1947 to dispel the mounting belief among some of America's youth that the American dream was no longer attainable. The Horatio Alger Association inducts role models as lifetime members, those whose lives' experiences exemplify the precept that opportunities for a successful life are available to all who are dedicated to the principles of integrity, hard work, perseverance, and compassion for others. The mission resonated because in 1947, that was a challenging time in America. In the first 50 years of the 20th century, Americans survived 2 world wars, the Great Depression, and a revolution in technology. There were seismic shifts occurring in terms of new careers, access to higher education through the GI Bill, and a baby boom that was beginning at that time, and more. Despite the emergent opportunities of post-war America, some questioned whether the American dream still existed. Was it real, or was it a concept of the 19th century, one that would only live on in the stories written by people like Horatio Alger? The Horatio Alger Association and its founders believed that the American dream was indeed quite real and became compassionate advocates for that great dream. They established the Horatio Alger Award to recognize individuals as lifetime members whose trials and triumphs were proof that the American dream was in fact alive and well. Horatio Alger members saw the values of freedom, mutual respect, and equality of opportunity as the compass for successful United States of America. No matter the challenges our nation faces, these are the values upon which the American dream will prevail. These values became the foundation of the Horatio Alger Association, and 72 years later, freedom, mutual respect, and equality opportunity remain our compass, guiding the association's mission and ensuring the American dream for generations to come. It's remarkable to be here this evening in this as the first ever president-elect of the Horatio Alger Association and representing all that it stands for, to accept the DAR's President General's Medallion from an organization which I have long respected. This organization comprised of women who have worked tirelessly to honor our nation's history and perpetuate its values. The Daughters of the American Revolution promotes patriotism, preserves American history, and secures Americans' future through better education for children. Yes, similarly, the Horatio Alger Association, through the generosity of its members, has bequeathed opportunity to 25,000 young people through college scholarships in the United States and in Canada, enabling them to pursue their own versions of the American dream. Since 1984, more than $159 million has been awarded, and more each year. This year alone, in this auditorium, we provided over $20 million to more than 2,500 outstanding scholars. Yes, and each of those 2,500 scholars face personal adversity, yet they exhibit steadfast commitment to pursue their dreams through higher education. The scholarships are fully funded by the Horatio Alger members. More than 700 men and women have been inducted and recognized for their outstanding achievements through those 72 years. As we celebrate the accomplishments of women tonight, I'm proud to call Maya Angelou, Condoleezza Rice, Carol Burnett, and Ginny Rometty, and many more among my fellow Horatio Alger women members. You might recognize some of the gentlemen's names who've been inducted over those years, like Ronald Reagan, Gerald Ford, Billy Graham, Art Linkletter, and Bob Dole, and President Jerry Ford. Each year we celebrate and support those business, civic, and cultural leaders who, in the face of seemingly insurmountable challenges, choose to rise up and pursue their dreams. Fittingly, we induct the new class of Horatio Alger Award recipients right here in the majesty of this historic DAR Constitution Hall. As I look around tonight in this room of bright and bold women and men, I'm inspired to think about the collective impact we will have in the future of this great nation. Thank you for all you do as an organization to support the next generation of Americans. And on behalf of the Horatio Alger Association, you have our deep and profound gratitude for this award. Thank you so very much. Thank you. We're so pleased to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Barrett, for being with us tonight as we honor the remarkable Horatio Alger Association. We heard from George Washington earlier tonight and honored the man who has studied him so thoroughly. Historian General Virginia Trader will tell us more about another person who has immersed himself into the world of George Washington. Mrs. Trader.
Madam President General, the NSDAR Excellence in American History Book Award recognizes distinguished historical literary works of nonfiction or biographies that have made an original contribution to the body of historical knowledge or added new information to previously familiar materials. The Indian World of George Washington, the First President, the First Americans, and the Birth of a Nation by Colin G. Calloway gives us a powerful presentation of how George Washington's life was interwoven with the Indian world of North America. Dr. Calloway looks at how George Washington was able to build a nation on Indian land. By his peers, Dr. Calloway has been described as one of the best historians of colonial Native America. Dr. Calloway currently serves as the Professor of History and Native American Studies at Dartmouth College in Hanover, New Hampshire. He received his PhD in history from the University of Leeds, England, and has received numerous awards and fellowships and honors. The Indian World of George Washington was nominated by the North Shore chapter, Lake Forest, Illinois. Seated in the President General's box is Dr. Calloway's wife, Marcia. Would you please rise to be recognized? Madam President General, I am honored to present the 2019 NSDAR Excellence in American History Book Award to author Colin G. Calloway for The Indian World of George Washington.
Thank you. This is quite an honor. Some people might think me and my book an unlikely choice. Why would the National Society of the Daughters of the American Revolution, an organization known for its patriotism and its reverence for the Founding Fathers, present an award to a British historian? And I have to check, to confess, it did occur to me that I might not be eligible. Writing Native American history, both of which might portray the first president and the republic he created in less than positive terms. I'm happy to say I know better. More than 30 years ago, the NSDAR began compiling lists of minority military service during the Revolution. I've often been grateful to Hazel Kreinheder and her colleagues for their painstaking work identifying individual Native Americans and African Americans who served in the Patriot Corps. And in 2003, I think it was in January, I participated in a DAR symposium held here in Washington, D.C. on the forgotten patriots in the Revolution. History, I'm fond of saying, is not the same as the past. It is the stories we tell about the past, which raises the question of whose stories are included or excluded and who gets to decide. This makes history, as we've seen so often in recent years, contested ground. The NSDAR could, I suppose, dedicate all its efforts to preserving and defending a single, perhaps even a single-minded narrative of this nation's creation. Instead, it has worked to include other stories, not just to give a voice to neglected minorities, but a recognition that including their stories deepens our understanding of the nation's story. Ralph Waldo Emerson said he was ashamed to see what a shallow village tale our so-called history is. He knew that great nations deserve great histories. Great histories include multiple participants, multiple perspectives, and acknowledge the good, the bad, and the ugly. A book on the Indian world of George Washington might not do much for Washington's image as an icon, but it hopefully helps us to better understand him as a human, just as including Native Americans in his story, I hope, helps us to better understand America's story. Thank you for this award. Thank you for the work you have done, and thank you in advance for the work that you will continue to do. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Dr. Calloway, for your thorough research and for writing a book that provides another glimpse into the complex life of our nation's first president. Before we close this inspiring ceremony, we have one more special presentation. At Continental Congress each year, we have the opportunity to look back and to celebrate the accomplishments of the Society over the past year. But we also have a chance to look to the future. DAR members have traditionally focused their time more on helping people than they have on telling our own story to the public. But it is possible to do both. As DAR members are doing amazing projects in their local communities, displaying a symbol that is instantly recognizable for our organization helps people connect in their minds how DAR is making a difference. As we continue to think about the future of the DAR, especially as we draw closer to the 250th anniversary of our nation, we want to amplify our message so that communities recognize the opportunities that DAR provides for women to become interested in joining us in our service work. An organization's public brand image is essential in gathering recognition for the incredible work DAR members do in their communities. Tonight, after more than a year of research, conceptualization, and design, we are excited to introduce a newly refreshed public-facing DAR logo that will help us move into the future. What do you think? This refresh design is just that, a refresh of the original logo. Tonight's launch is just the start of a gradual transition. It is perfectly acceptable to use the original logo to represent our organization as we slowly incorporate and embrace the new design as chapters are able to support it. Please make sure to join us tomorrow morning when we will have a short presentation about the refreshed logo and the new DAR branding identity and logo style guide that you can access on the members' website. We are excited to introduce this newly refreshed DAR logo as we work to solidify our DAR brand identity as a relevant, engaging, and purposeful service organization. Thank you all for joining us this evening as we begin the 128th Continental Congress. Staying true to our founding mission, it was such a pleasure to highlight historic preservation at tonight's ceremony as we look ahead to Thursday night's ceremony when we honor excellence in education, and to Saturday night's ceremony celebrating patriotism and our nation's military personnel. Then on Friday night at the Grand Hyatt, we will focus on what DAR members do best, moving forward in service to support our local communities. And of course, on Saturday night, National Defense Night, we will honor our nation's service members and those who are diligent in supporting them. I hope you will be able to join us for these exciting evening events as well as our daytime business sessions when the reports we hear offer irrefutable proof that the DAR remains a relevant, vital, and multifaceted organization, making differences in communities across America and throughout the world. I look forward to spending the remainder of the week with you celebrating these exciting events. Now would you please stand while the colors are retired, and may we have some music. Continental Congress is recessed until 9 a.m. Thursday morning. Good evening.